I have been in chapter 9 of the Bhagavad Gita, and I just want to recap a few things I said in last week's katha and maybe previously as well. But last week, Lord Krishna tells us clearly that all these acts that you see that He's doing in this world, they do not bind Him. And He tells us that He's always sitting neutral. And not only is He sitting neutral, but also He's detached from everything in the world. And even before that, He gave us an example how He is not involved with us. And He gave us the example of the sky, space. And He says that space represents Him. And the wind, Vayu, represents all of us. And so that space is not involved in that wind. That is what Hinduism is all about. That is the concept of God in Hinduism. So He's saying that we should not be in bondage. And He tells us clearly, if we give some sort of effort, we will understand that very important divine example that He gave all of us. And then He went on to tell us, look, I'm the presiding being over this whole universe. And I am also the presiding officer, if you want, over all the activities. He says, my nature, Prakriti, that nature is a part of me. And that is my supreme being. And so, He tells us also that in this world, we came from that one God, and that is Ekam, and we are many, and that is Bahu. In the Upanishads, which is very close to what I read here regarding the Bhagavad Gita, there is a beautiful statement in the Upanishads, Ekam Bahusham. From the one, that one God, you get the many, people, plants, animals. What He's referring to is the soul, and that soul you cannot divide. So God and us, all of us, we are one. Brahman is one. And that Brahman within us, we can call that Brahman, we can call that Atma. That is one. So from the one, we project. Hindus do not believe in creation. We believe in projection. And I give you an example. It's not my example, but it's an Upanishadic example that's taken out of the Upanishads. And what they use there is the spider. The spider projects itself out of its own will, not externally. That is Hinduism. That is where we have been projected out of God. So, my friends, that is the basic concept of Hinduism. So when you have that, you don't need to go anywhere else. We have been steeped in superstition a long, long time. In India, in Guyana, in Trinidad. We have to stop that. And we may be limited in numbers. But when people understand this particular statement here that Krishna is telling us in this book, and let me tell you, this book is a powerful book. Because this book here, you have Lord Krishna speaking to all of us. You don't have this in any other books, even in Hinduism also. The Ramayana is powerful. The Upanishads, they are powerful books. But there are poets and saints that are required here, and they were inspired by God. But in this book, I'm going to read a verse here today. It's taken out of the lips of Lord Krishna Himself. Nobody else but the Lord. What can be more authoritative than that? So He is telling us that we should not be steeped in superstition. Because He's telling us, look, you are a part of me. So how can you go outside? The minute you do that, you are not spiritually developed. And so there are a lot of our brothers and sisters. We have to bring them and try to make them understand. Can you make all of them understand? No, my friends. You're going to probably find a majority here. Because it's easy. Psychologically, if someone tells you if you do this or you tie a string on your hand, you can be okay. It will help you. How can a piece of string on your hand help you? I mean, so we have to start thinking for ourselves, and that's the beauty of human beings. We have the intellect, and we have the understanding, and we have that mind, and we have to use it. And so, this is a challenge before all of us. It's not easy when you've had people way back to my father's time, when they have been telling you all of this stuff. It's very difficult. So some people are brainwashed. They don't even want to hear what you're saying. They're not open-minded. But Lord Krishna is telling us here that He is the higher state, and He is the infinite divine. He's endless. And so we are endless. I will pick up this morning and take one verse, and this is chapter 9, verse 11. So let's listen to Lord Krishna as He speaks to all of us this morning. Friends, this here is in relation to a topic that Lord Krishna discussed in the 4th chapter, where He tells us He is the divine incarnation. And that infinite Brahman, that endless God, He's telling us, can appear as a divine personality. And that is called avatar. You see, in Hinduism, we have the personal and we have the impersonal God. And so, when Lord Krishna takes human form, that's the personal God. He tells us in chapter 4, Yada yada hi dharmasya glalir bhavati bharata abhyutanam adharmasya tadatmanam srijam yaham. He tells us here, he says when unrighteousness increases and righteousness decreases, He brought forth Himself. He comes into the world to teach us correctly. That is the personal God. And then He goes on and He tells us the reason why He comes into the world. Paritranaya sadhanam vinashaya chaturshritam dharma samsthapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. He said that He comes into the world to make it right with the good people, and also to destroy the evil, and then also to establish righteousness. And He says He's coming from age to age, yuge yuge. Beautiful, my friends. So in Hinduism, you have the personal and you have the impersonal God. But for Hindus, we have to move higher and higher to the impersonal God. You see, the reason is that we have not come from a personal God. We came from supreme consciousness. And you can call that consciousness Brahman, God, Ram, Krishna, Vishnu, whatever name you want to use, that's fine. But we have come from that. So it is important for us to understand that we have come from consciousness. We are consciousness, we are Atma, we are body. We are not body, but we are soul. And that is what Krishna keeps telling us, throughout the Bhagavad Gita. So this particular point here, that is called avatar. So it's this external physical system that is very a poor expression of what is immense within himself. And you know, Arjuna in chapter 12, he poses the question to Krishna. He was a very brilliant student actually, very astute and very sharp. And he told Krishna here, he asked the question, the very first question in chapter 12. He said, Evam satanta yukta ye bhaktas tvam parayupasati ye cha yaksharam yakritam tesham ye yoga vittama. He said, Lord Arjuna, speaking for all of us, Lord, how should I worship you? Should I worship you in the personal sense, or should I worship you in the impersonal sense? Well, when we reach to that verse, you will find out how Krishna answered that particular question. But let me get back to the point here, my friends. This body really is a measuring rod, it seems to be, for what is inside a person. So even ordinary people sometimes, what do you find? The body of a person can be ordinary, but you do not know what is inside that individual. And all of you have examples of people who look ordinary, but mentally they have a lot there, and we just have to sometimes tap it. And as I said, all of you have examples of it. But I'm going to tell you my example. My example is my father. I did not know until I got into puja and ritual. Then I realized what my mom, Pandit, used to say, that he used to call my father Bonoy. He says a lot of people in this country, he used to say, they don't know the mental capacity and ability that that man had. My father would do any type of puja, shraddha, anything without a book. He had it all memorized. And not about slokas and mantras. He had it all. And in those days, it wasn't easy at his age to go to school. They didn't even afford. But whatever my that's my grandfather did, help him out. So my father used to go to all the high schools were in Georgetown, and we were living on the West Coast. And he had to take the train at a place called Hague and go to Georgetown, and at 8 o'clock he's there for the class. He used to go to high school. And when he was ready to write the Cambridge certificate examination, he was told that the administration fee for the exam was used for his tuition. So he didn't get to write the exam. So he had to go back the next year. But before that happened, during the summer, he used to cut a bundle of grass every morning for the cows before he takes the train to Georgetown. And this one morning, the bar grass stuck him in his eye. And so they tried to do this home cure. But it didn't really help. So they had to spend all the money on doctors. So they couldn't afford to send him back. But what my father did, and he never used to talk. He always said, don't talk about whatever you do. Name and fame is not there. He always used to tell me and my mom that when you guys do something, do it sincerely. But you know what my father did? And only later in life I really understood. I used to see a lot of certificates in the home. But my father was taking correspondence course from universities in India, like Madras and so forth. He was taking Sanskrit and Hindi, and that is how he developed himself. So when he learned Pandit work, he went to Esquibo, and some of the priests there, he realized that they weren't reading correctly. And not only that, his life also was, he was uncomfortable with some of the things that he had to do. He had to buy rum for some of these priests, and they used to eat meat and all. And my father was a vegetarian, and also he was very strict, no alcohol and so forth. But he had that mental ability. But you wouldn't know that. He was very ordinary. And people who have met him, they realize. So that's my example of a person that may look ordinary, but when you dive deeper, you will see a lot there. So that is what Krishna is telling us here. He says they look ordinary. And he's saying here, Awa janati mam mudha. He says, foolish people. This is Krishna speaking now. He says, foolish people deride me. It means they scorn me, they disregard me. And then he says, but manushim tanum ashritam. And they take only my human body. That is how they are measuring me, Lord Krishna is saying. But that's not the way. They treat me like anybody else, he says. And why so? He tells us, Mama Param Bhavam Ajanantu. He says, they don't understand my higher nature. And he says, what is that higher nature of mine? He tells us here in the verse also, Bhuta Maheshwara, the Supreme Lord of the universe. He's telling us that He is the Supreme Lord of the universe. So my friends, that dimension, that aspect here of people are not, that they cannot grasp, Krishna is saying, about His ability as God. So therefore they speak ill of me, he's saying, and they insult me also. Ajananti, that word means insulting. And they go to the extent where they scorn me, they mock me. And also, not only that, they insult me. So this is why great teachers have to suffer in this world. Sri Krishna suffered, Sri Ram suffered. Even if you go in the other field, Jesus Christ suffered. So what about us? You know, so this is the challenge before us. So ordinary people, Krishna is saying, misunderstand. And we have to, you know, those of us, you know, who are seeing the truth and understanding Hindu concept of God, even if it's a small number. And I am seeing a lot of change that when I started Pandit work. I am seeing a lot of change and a lot of swamis, they're coming out. And so I think for the younger generation, it would be better for them because they have to live in this Western world and they should understand the concept of Hinduism at that level. If not, they are going to, and you teaching them superstitious things and they're hearing this, they're going to say, well, what is Hinduism? Well, adults and so forth, they accept that and they feel that that's the way. But not these students or these young ones, my friends, believe me. I see it, even in Guyana. Many of them talk to me and they tell me, they said, you're saying something different, which we like. I said, I'm not saying anything different. It's all in our scriptures here. It's in the Bhagavad Gita. It's in the Upanishads. It's in the Vedas. That is what I'm reading. You know, I'm not reading some of these Puranas that maybe some people wrote. That you know, for instance, said that women should not participate in that. That's all nonsense. If you're equal, why you can't participate there? That's why they don't read Gita, they don't read Upanishads, they don't read Vedas. You will never ever find anything like that in the Upanishads, in the Bhagavad Gita, or the Vedas. And anything on the superstitious side, you will find other things. So, my friends, what Krishna is saying here, these people are really foolish because they mock at me, they scorn me, and they will understand one day. He says, Manushim tanum ashritam. So, when adopting this human body, he's saying, why? He says, Param Bhavam Ajanantu Mam Bhuta Maheshwaram. He says here that I am the endless reality, he says. And behind all this universe, that aspect, they cannot understand. You know, there's a beautiful story of a great saint, and I always mention him, by the name of Sri Ramakrishna. He was the guru and the spiritual teacher of a great Swami by the name of Swami Vivekananda. This guy could not read or write, Swami Ramakrishna, but he had terrific mental ability to put things together. And you know, one day Ramakrishna was walking in his rose garden in a place called Dakshineshwar in India. I've been there. And it's a beautiful place. And one gentleman came and saw Sri Ramakrishna in the garden. So he took him for an ordinary gardener. So he asked Ramakrishna, can you pluck a rose flower for me? And Ramakrishna plucked it and give it to him. And so this man later, because he came from a far place in India to meet Sri Ramakrishna, so Ramakrishna went up to the hall because there were a lot of devotees there. And he found, this man found Ramakrishna, who was the ordinary gardener. He is the man who is going to give them knowledge. And he was very exasperated. He was very embarrassed, ashamed. And what happened? The man told Ramakrishna, I'm sorry. Ramakrishna said, you should not be sorry for anything. You asked me for a flower, I plucked it, I gave it to you. That's my duty. And so, that is how we mistake people. Ordinary people who may have a lot going for them. We take them for granted sometimes, as I said last week. And they do not know that that individual may be an extraordinary individual. So what Lord Krishna is saying here, that they take me for an ordinary person because they see me in human form, but they do not know that I'm extraordinary. And in life, we see a lot of examples like that. And so, a lot of times we do not know. A person may have a mental ability, and we cannot know that until we start talking to the person. And I've seen that. I mean, I mentioned my father, but I've seen it in other people as well through my lifetime. And this mental level, we cannot study that mental level, my friends. We can study the measurement, the pores, the height, the length, and so forth, but not what is inside a person. And also, you can find other things there. The person might want to be extraordinary, but there's nothing in there. And sometimes in life, you're challenged. You know, and I've been challenged, but sometimes people don't understand. And I don't like to say it, but a person may have just a primary school education. If you tell them that, they wouldn't like it and come and challenge me. I've been a professor for 25 years. I've been reading this book for a long, long time, you know, and then they come and challenge me. But as my father says, that there's no cure for ignorance. And that is what you're going to find in this world also. You know, but I don't see anything, you know, regarding that. But people challenge you all the time. And those people, they're very egoistic. They think they know. But they don't know. And the minute you find those type of people and they talk like that, they're very limited. They're small-minded. And they cannot learn because they're closed-minded. And this same saying that I quoted here, Ramakrishna, he says, three people he said that you got to kind of avoid. And I remember two of them, he said. One is a person who is drunk. He said, don't waste time with that person. And a person who is closed-minded. And that is what I do. When I hear this stuff and I hear people, you know, challenge things that, you know, you say, well, why, you know? I mean, you have to have something before you challenge someone. No. So this is what you'll find in life. And when I speak about these things, not that I try to bring down anybody, but I want the young ones to stand up and stand up very strong, because you are going to be the future. You know, when we're gone, I'm gone, Ravi, you know, might take leave of it and so on. You guys got to pick up the slack, and you got to do it very, very fast. And you are getting a lot of help in the world, because there are a lot of people coming out to help you to develop your spiritual ability. But my friends, let me close with this last story here. Because sometimes we do not, as I said, understand what is within a person and where that person is coming from. There's a great story about a poor man, and he used to go around to different houses for alms and begging, you know, and he looks very poor. And sometimes we don't know. And that person might be a poet, or that person might be someone of a great devotee of God. Before I get into the story, I always remember my mother. You know, in Guyana, people always come to your door and they're begging. And we were poor, and you know, she always, no matter how many times these people come, she always finds some rice or potato to give. And one day I told her, I said, "Ma, why are you doing that? You know, we got to work so hard." And I got a scolding that day that I would never forget, and I never ever said anything to her again. She told me, she said, "Jai, let me tell you something. Never ever say that to me again." And then she went on, and I listened to her carefully, and she said, "You don't know who's coming to your home. It might be some person, or maybe God also appear in someone." So, you know, so when I tell these stories, it makes a lot of sense. But the story I want to tell you is about a guy named Purandar Das. And this guy, he came from Karnataka in India. He was a prince, very, very rich. But what he did, he distributed all his riches to everybody in the village and so forth. And he became very poor. And this is the man that's going out, to beg for food. And what he was a musician. So he used to go door to door, and he did his own compositions. And he would go door to door singing these songs. So a lot of people, they took him for a beggar, and not realizing that this was a great, great man. So actually, as I said, he was a prince, but in reality, they didn't see that. But he had this divine reality. He understood that. That's the reason why he gave up all these things, the riches, because those things are not going to take you back to God. Sure, we have to have some material, house and cars and so forth, but in the end, my friends, we have to surrender like Arjuna, surrender to Krishna. But when you surrender, it's not material. Right now I'm seeing someone, an older person, and every time I go there, she talks about money. And I've done her work over the years, about 25, 30 years. But this is all, she was just doing these pujas, as a routine thing, that I got to do a puja every year, and not care if you have a competent person or not. But I happened to do it for about 25 years for her. But I could never ever get her to go beyond that puja and go and develop. And today, all she talks about is money, money, money. That money is not going to take her back to God. You see? So we have to be careful in what we're doing. So my friends, that was the story of Purandar Das. And there are a lot of stories all over the place. And you take Shankaracharya, a great Hindu philosopher, lived only 32 years, mastered the whole Vedas, walked all over the vast India. Nobody could recognize. He was an ordinary man, but what he had up here was terrific. Swami Vivekananda did the same thing, traveled throughout India. But some people even, I can tell you stories and stories about Swami Vivekananda. But that man moved the world, I tell you. He moved the world and made people understand Hinduism. And I always tell the young ones and even adults, when you want to read it, even if Gita is hard or so, pick up just one thing from Swami Vivekananda. There's a lecture that he gave. In fact, a Parliament of Religion talks, and it's about 20-something pages. But read it, The Parliament of Religion by Swami Vivekananda, and you will see what he has done for Hinduism. And what did he do? He used the Bhagavad Gita, he used the Upanishads, and he used the Vedas, because those people knew, and they didn't go to the other side, the superstitious side. Because I tell you, my friends, if you can take out anyone that's superstitious and take them out of that area, you're doing great service to that individual, because that person is not going back to God. That person is depending on what someone can do, like a priest or whoever. No, they can't do anything for you. You have to do it for yourself. That is what Gita says. You have to do it, you have to have that strength within you. May the blessings of Almighty God always be